Hi, and welcome to another episode of Celebrity Customer Experience Riffs with me, Jill Raff, where we riff on anything and everything EX to CX, employee experience to customer experience, because I am truly obsessed with the concept of employee experience leading to outstanding customer experience. And I do honestly believe that your business will increase its revenue due to engaging employees and customers. And it begins from the inside out, which is why my process is called the inside out framework. Because when you start inside and top to bottom, you will absolutely produce great employee and customer experience. So, why celebrity customer experience? Well, I called it this because I believe that everyone deserves the same experience, treatment, attention, pampering as a celebrity. And so, treat all your customers, everyone who comes to do business with you, like a celebrity, and you will see their rewards come back in leaps and bounds. So today, I'm really excited to bring you a guest that is so interesting. Before I bring him on, I just want to remind everyone that if you are watching this live, please comment and I will be able to see your comments and communicate with you directly. This particular episode, I'm pre recording with my guest because he is coming to us from India. And so the time difference doesn't make it convenient for him. So be sure to put in the comments and tag he and myself. So with that, I want to introduce you today with my guest, Ajay Nambiar. Ajay, thank you so much for joining me today.
Jill, thank you so much for having me on the show. I just love the tagline of Riffs with Jill Raff. Outstanding. Couldn't have been a better moniker that is so sticky and, well, it just rhymes so well. So,
Yeah,
pleasure to
I
be
like
on board
that.
with you on this program
Mm,
with you.
thank you. Thank you so much. So there's so much to talk about. I want to jump in and first give you a little bit for everyone who's watching and listening to know a little bit about you because you have such a broad, incredible background and experience. So AJ is recognized amongst the top 150 global experienced thought leaders and influencers with 28 years of business operations and customer experience expertise in hospitality, technology, and real estate sectors. He's proficient in building high performance teams, scalable, multi locational, omni channel systems, and certified processes. AJ has established many first ever business practices that are used as benchmarks in the industries. As a self driven, logical, passionate, results and execution oriented go getter, he thrives in a steady state and VUCA business environments. He is also, this is cool, a marathon and a triathlete. AJ is also recognized through doing CX and in the CX conference space, where he's put in over 400 hours of experience both in the international and domestic sectors, doing conferences as chair, speaker, and moderator on the panelists. So wow. And people just like that's a lot, but wait till you hear the details. I think AJ, you and I became connected, and I'm so thankful because we were both on that top 150 global CX thought leaders and influencers list of last year, 2020.
Congratulations to you too, Jill.
Uh-huh.
Congratulations to you too.
Well, I just was so honored to be on it with
Same
people
here.
like yourself, really.
Same here.
And what I love about it isn't even as much as being recognized and being seen in the same view and perspective with all of the wonderful other CX experts like yourself, is that it gave me the opportunity to meet people like you, to meet
Absolutely.
you, and just to
Absolutely.
connect with people who are truly not just like minded, but like valued. And in our conversations, I've always really enjoyed that connection and really learning about who you are and your values and how you approach life and how you attack every new challenge. And so let's dive in with that so people can understand a little bit about how that has played out in your life.
Sounds good,
So
Jill.
Tell us a little bit about your background and what lit your fire in this journey to really be focused on the service businesses and to consider this route that's really thinking of the employee and or the customer experience.
Sure. Very quickly, this happened by accident. It was not by design. My dad was in the army, so we've traveled all across the country, and he was a doctor in the army. So the natural progression was I also may have become a doctor, but I don't think I had the aptitude to be a doctor. And I think for all of us, there is a calling. There's a calling which you can't decide. It's predestined for you. And for me, it was service. So I happened to enroll on the first bachelor's program in Asia way back. Well, if I tell you the year, people will guess my greater than 24 years of age. But it happened way back. We were the first batch, and I think for me that was the most outstanding ride that hasn't stopped since then. Not just professionally, but also personally. I think it gives me the greatest high. And after you've done, somebody who's come out from hospitality or travel or tourism, if they come with that background, I think they can survive in any industry that has an outside in approach to a service mindset. I think they come pre-prepared. They're ready-made. It's off-the-shelf product to a large extent, that it's in your DNA. I have for a long time said that this runs in my blood. It's in my veins. And if it is so, then you never work a day. And I haven't worked a day. It's just something that I enjoy doing. The challenge is what gets me going. And to me, it's been one hell of a ride since then, doing something different across industries. And I've been at a very, it's very interesting, Jill. I've been lucky or fortunate enough to be at a stage where something has changed in that industry. So when I started with hotels, we were at that point when we were just about starting computerization. I was fortunate to see the transition between a manual system to
Mm,
a computerized system.
incredible.
I'm blessed that it happened like that.
And
When
that's huge. When you
it
think,
is,
I think most
it is.
people who are watching probably don't even
Know
know
what a
or
manual
remember
system
much
is.
about life. Yeah, don't know what a manual is, don't even know what
That is
life
true.
was before,
That,
computerized systems and everything
that,
we do is all
that is
through
true.
technology. So
It is.
that's so remarkable. You had
It is.
mentioned to me that in the mid 90s, and we'll pick up because I want to dive deeper into that. But you had mentioned to me in the mid 90s, early 2000s, that customer experience as a concept didn't even really exist, which,
Right.
is pretty wild. And I think that says so much of what you're doing today and the progression of that.
That is true. And there are two things to it, Jill. It's a very valid point you've picked. There are two things to it. One, service as it existed was typically in the hospitality sector, be it
Mm,
travel, tourism, or hotels, hospitality.
mhm, yeah.
Outside of that, it was purely product driven, sales and product driven, right?
Mhm,
So in India, we saw the transition because we liberalized in the early 90s. Uh, Towards 2000 is when we started getting the internet access into the country. uh, Post internet access, foreign companies came into India. So hence we could benchmark ourselves against international. Till then, it was purely domestic and limited to a few sectors. Count myself amongst the lucky few who was fortunate to have um, had a baptism in hospitality before the boom happened in this country, be it in terms of BPOs, which came into India in a big way because we had a cost arbitrage, a dollar arbitrage advantage in India, that the BPOs came into India, or the larger MNCs that came into India. I think we were lucky that we had our foundation prior to that happening.
mm,
So I'm not boasting, but I think if you ask people of that era, we are rock solid. If a computer system shuts down, we can still run a hotel.
mhm.
Yeah, so it's funny you talk of a Whitney system where to know a guest history, it was written manually that you like this kind of a pillow, you like this kind of a soft drink, and we would remember it every time you came in. No computers, it was manual, and everybody knew it. So I think we come from that confidence of having lived in an era where it didn't exist to where we are today. It makes you that much more solid.
Well, and it's interesting because I think today we're so spoiled and it's so easy with all of the software systems that we have
Sure.
to keep track of customers' information, what they like, what they don't like, what's their favorite thing, even personal details
Sure.
about their life, their family, their birthdays, things that we can then call on so easily when they come back as a repeat customer, or to reach out to them in between your visits. And I think people are just so, I hate to say it, but I think a lot of people are lazy and they just make excuses why these things don't happen. And in fact, as you just pointed out, it was much more difficult when you had to write it down and make sure everybody saw what that piece of paper where it was written, so that every single employee there could know the details to then make sure that they were using that in hospitality directly with their guests. It reminds me also, AJ, of when you talked about, if your computer broke down, you could still run your business, which I think is really, really important. I know it's to people, I can just hear some of my clients, the owners saying, oh my gosh, it's just one more thing. Like, our bandwidth, we have to teach our people so many things. And as it is, it's hard to get them to follow through.
Sure.
And now if we have to train them as if they didn't have computers, oh my gosh. But when I went to culinary school, I went to Le Cordon Bleu in Paris. And I remember we had to do these like Swiss meringues and all these things where you're whisking and whisking and whisking. And, then you're pouring something in, you still have to whisk. You thought your arm was going to fall off. And I
Oh yes,
remember
you're right.
someone in my
Absolutely.
pratique, in my where we did our practicals, where we were doing our cooking after watching the demo, said, chef, like, we have blenders, like we have, mix masters, like we have our KitchenAids today, why do we need to be doing it ourselves? And he said, and what happens if you lose electricity? What happens if the machine breaks down? You have a guest out there who's put in an order, you still have to serve, you have to deliver what they've ordered. So you've got to be able to get in there and do it manually. So that has really stuck with me, and it's, I think, very similar.
I'm. In fact, it's amazing you bring that to light. We share hospitality as something that we both have a background of. And you're mentioning, whisking. My first summer training out of college was in a five-star hotel, and my job started at 6 in the morning to make bread, the dough in the bakery,
Yeah.
a 1 quintal sack of flour, and then you put everything in a well in the middle, and it was kneaded by hand.
Yes. Of course.
I did develop, forceps, my biceps and stuff did develop for that while
Yeah.
doing that in the morning, and then you would have a 20-liter, uh, a bowl of cream on ice, which you had to
Yeah.
whip, and get it to a standing consistency, and
Yep.
then start all over again. And today, if I talk to youngsters who are actually in the same field, and they say, hey, you know what? Really? Here we've got a machine that just gets it done. So,
Yeah.
but I think the pleasure of doing, and I'm sorry, I think the context is brilliant, Jill. The context is uh, technology is a wonderful aid. I agree with you, but I think if you talk about relationships,
Mm,
today's relationships are, I'll call it a little aseptic. I'm not saying it, I don't mean it purely as that. The relationship is more driven by AI, bots, chat, and
mm,
what somebody is telling you. There is no eye contact, or there's little eye contact in terms of the relationship. You still go to a traditional hotel and you talk to the bell desk or the concierge, and
mhm.
you will find the the senior statesman will talk to you with eye contact. He's polite. He's like that, tree which has been oak tree which has been there for the last 20 years, and his conversation to you will be warm, full of emotions, full of a
Yeah.
personal feeling. So I do understand there's a trade-off between technology and the human touch. I always get this question in conferences that when do you switch over, or switch over between the two? And my point is that it's okay for transactions because people don't want to waste time in transactions. But when somebody needs help, that's the time to actually build the relationship, because your brand actually stands then at that time. And
Interesting.
that comes with experience.
Hmm. I love that you brought up the word transactions, because actually I have a book. It's a collaborative book, so I'm a collaborative author with my local National Speakers Association chapter here in
Okay,
Austin,
wonderful.
and we each have our own jackets, which has our own title, and mine is called "Transforming Transactions into Interactions," because I really think that it's about creating that relationship. Everyone's used to the transaction and it's quick and it's fast, and that's great if that's all you want in that moment. But I think within the lifetime journey of a customer's journey with you, the lifetime value is coming about because of the relationship that you've developed, and that happens as a result of the interactions that you create with that person, that you take it from a transaction into an interaction. Because if it's only transactional, no one has any reason to come back to you. You've
Good.
Unless it's about price. And then you've made yourself a commodity. And if you're a commodity, you're always going to be beaten on price. So you will be out of business pretty fast. But when you create that relationship and you have that interaction and you look someone in the eye and you make them feel like they are the most important person in the room, you make them feel like a celebrity and give them that celebrity customer experience, then you're going to have an employee, if you're doing that internally, and an external customer, you're going to have them for life. Yeah.
I
I'm
agree
glad
with
you
you.
brought that up.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So let's dive a little bit more. It is very interesting that the different industries that you've been in, hospitality and tech and real estate. So we actually overlap on a lot of those things.
Yes, we do.
And it is really amazing that let's just dive first into hospitality. I agree 100% that it is something that's in your DNA. To me, I call it like this hospitality soul. There's just something that's a part of who you are. And I know that you spent actually the first half of your career with Marriott, and just give us a little bit, and worked at Club Mahindra, which is very cool. And for those of you who don't know, I didn't know, AJ informed me that it's actually kind of like the Indian Club Med, which is very
That's
cool.
that's right.
Very neat. So tell us a little bit about your hospitality background, and then we're going to move over into the tech world, which is also very interesting.
Sure. So hospitality was, of course, I started out with ITC hotels. ITC had a tie-up with Sheraton, and that's how we started my career. So, in fact, my college also was ITC run hotel management graduate program in India, and the natural transition was then as a management trainee, and then, of course, getting posted out. I love the kitchens, but being the first batch, my confidence was probably more in the customer facing side of it. So I moved to the operation side, which is food and beverage or front office. Spent my time there with hotels, and interesting, prior to Club Mahindra, there was Sterling, which was a pioneer in timeshare in India, similar to Club Med. So I did two stints in timeshare, which is Sterling and Club Mahindra,
Hmm.
and outside of that, it was with hotels, typical either in a commercial district or in a resort.
Mhm.
And again, I think it was just setting a foundation, and I believe you spend most of your time in setting a good foundation, the rest of the structure will stand. So that's
100%.
what hospitality did to me.
I'm so glad you said that, 100%, which is why I really stress to everyone who's building a business, starting out, or scaling a business. If you don't scale until you make sure that you have your foundation
Yeah,
set, that you have your systems in place, that you're getting the results that you want with your people internally, and your customers are responding to that. Because you don't want to replicate something that is not working. And then, having to go back and make those changes is a nightmare. And look at all the greatest, largest franchises. I'm very
great.
fortunate. I grew up and came from the number one hamburger franchise, McDonald's, from the very early days. My parents opened McDonald's from number 150. And so imagine if they had already established, if they had not established, excuse me, these systems
Systems and
and
processes. Absolutely.
consistency, it would be a
Or
hot
the supply
mess.
chain.
And they would never be in India and all over the world and everywhere that they are today.
That's so true.
That is a really important point. So I'm glad you mentioned that. So let's move on because this is really cool. So you moved into the tech sector, and at a time that was a very, very fascinating time. There was no internet happening in India.
Yeah, that's
Imagine
true.
everyone, right?
That is true.
Imagine there's no
That is
internet. So tell us about that time for you and what your experiences were and how it affected, both the people, internal customers, and of course, external, and just how the world changed in India with that and how you were a part of that. That's so cool.
Yeah. So again, I think it was preordained or destined for me that I would be uh, at that time. This was '99. Internet was just coming into India. My daughters still have a laugh whenever I tell them what internet meant at that time. A dial-up connection, where you had a CD which you put into your laptop. There were no mobile phones. Mobile phones had just about come in, uh, and you had to wait, connect on a manual, single BRI number. You can hear a ringtone in the background. It's
Yes.
connecting, and then
I,
then you wait, and then you wait, and then you connect. Right. So
I have to admit, I do remember that actually as well,
you would
and
have had
embarrassed
AOL
to
at that time.
say. Yeah.
AOL in the US, AOL. So we modeled ourselves quite alike AOL. It was, the company that I worked for. Uh, we had no clue in this country, so we hired the best of talent from every possible industry, from the paint industry, FMCG, from the banking sector, BFSI, and we built what was, I think, the most fascinating ride. If you ask me, I think that was the best 7 years that I enjoyed, uh, having learned the hospitality side, the service side of it, but looking at something which never existed in this country in terms of technology. And where we are today is thanks to all the pioneers who
Oh,
saw way ahead that India, with 1.2 billion, now 1.3, would be at the cutting edge of technology. Outstanding, I cannot, it's like your first bungee jump or your first skydive. You can do 10 after that, but the first will always be special.
hmm.
And we so there's nothing called service, if I can call it that, in technology. We had to set up something called tech support. So we hired the first batch of tech support guys we hired were specialists in technology, because outside of them, I would not have known how to answer questions related to how to get the connection up. So we did that smart decision of getting them in. We got our processes certified, documented, and one of the greatest things that I learned then was frugal excellence. I call it that because when we were 10,000 customers, I had a team of around 34 servicing customers from across the country. When we went to 500,000 customers, we were still 34.
Hmm.
And
So
that's when I realized, how or learned along with the team, and thanks to my peers, and my mentors, it was an outstanding ride to see how do you do root cause, reduce the cause for concern, and hence you can handle larger volumes without having to either stretch the existing, but with systems and processes, and of course technology as an aid. We had an outstanding technology team, uh, you know, and then internet in India happened, right? So
yeah.
content, building a portal, uh, content for people, emails, all was something fascinating because it was for the first time that we were seeing things like that. And
Yeah.
we built it on a similar model. AOL had a wall garden of content. We also tried to build a wall garden of content. I remember we launched the first broadband portal in India. At that time, content was we were doing crazy things. We set up our own studio, recording people. Like today, you and I are sitting here. I actually built a studio. We had celebrities coming across, sitting in the studio. Cricket is a passion for
Yeah.
us. Having somebody give audio commentary while the live, cricket was happening. We did some
Ah,
outstanding stuff, and we failed a lot. But I must tell you, thanks to those failures, we were as successful as we could be. And I must thank my entire team and, of course, peers and mentors. for that ride. Um, we
Amazing.
are today at in 2021, knowing technology is with all that we have with apps and stuff like that. But wow, I mean, those days were outstanding. Similar to mobiles, I was when mobiles came into the country. I was again part of the team that started with mobile phones, big brick phones that they were. Um,
I remember
Moving
that.
from paging systems to, yes, those massive guys, but you would hang it on your belt with a loop and yet be so proud that you have a phone of that nature. uh, we were paying some astronomical prices for calls to be made, but again, they're an outstanding experience. Billing cycles and a lot of billing challenges. We actually established probably the best billing process that existed at the time. So yeah, outstanding. And then of course Yahoo happened in India, and to be part of establishing content for Yahoo in India was bringing live cricket on the internet was unique. It hadn't happened before. Bringing multi languages. India as a country has got languages and dialects. To
Mhm.
be able to give content in multilingual, uh, 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 multilingual and across news, sports, finance. Uh, oh, it was outstanding. I mean, so Jill, I think that was, it was a high. It was an adrenaline rush, so to speak.
I can get it. Wow, you touched on so much. And I think, I mean, what you talked about that you were showing a live cricket game and commenting on it back then in the early days, long before that was happening. That's pretty amazing. And all of the just how quickly you developed all of that. I understand. For me, I'm one of those people who loves to get things started, who loves to brainstorm ideas and kind of plan out the beginning, and it's that beginning, that initial rush, exactly like you said. I totally understand that. If you could dive a little bit more into what you said, which kind of started this conversation, which I think people could learn from, is how you went with 34 staff with, I think you said 10,000 and then to a million. Like, how did you do that so that others can learn of how they really maximize and are most
Sure,
efficient for growth?
sure. It's a very valid question, Jill. If you look at, so there were two defining moments. I must tell you, so we had no precedent to it, so we were learning as we went along, right?
Right.
What technology also did to a lot of us, including me, prior to that, in hospitality, it's a very steady state business. In a sense, you have a service design, you have a process to it because it has been there for a long time. Technology was new and it changed every quarter. Business models changed every quarter because you didn't know what was going to come next.
Right.
One. So, what we learned was get it out there first. It doesn't have to be perfect, right? Get it out there
Yes,
first because
that's
grabbing
important.
eyeballs was the business. So you get it out there and you improve. But because you got out there first, you've created the first level of stickiness. And then you keep improving. But if you keep improving and don't stay static, you will have a great head start. To me, it was a great life lesson that you don't have to start perfect. And there are multiple examples of companies that wanted to get it perfect, but some fleet-footed, fast guy got it done quick, got it done fast, got it done. He got the basics right, and he had grabbed the market share. Very difficult. So it was a wonderful learning on that part. The second was on because you started gathering data, which was not manual. You could look at reams of data. You could analyze data. What was big data? What is big data today? AI, uh, data analysis, data scientists. We had we had systems because it was data driven and technology driven. You could dive into what was causing reasons for customers to get in touch with you.
Yes.
Hence root cause, hence Six Sigma. So we did Six Sigma projects that would reduce the number of incidents of failures. If you
Yeah.
start, and because we started doing that, you could with the same team handle infinitely more number of customers, because you've addressed what is the 80/20 or Pareto, what is the largest contributors. You could, as long as and we kept doing that, we got quite proficient at doing that. and that resulted in us being able to handle larger volumes, because you suddenly start doing self-help tools. You allow them to self diagnostics on the CD that we were giving them. So it
Mhm.
reduced the need for them to call us, and hence we could handle more. And we
Yes.
kept doing that. You keep skinning the 80/20, 80/20 every time, and all you're doing is creating more buffer space for you to be able to handle far greater volumes. Today, it sounds simple when I talk about it, but that learning curve, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world.
Hmm. I think a simple takeaway, and I hope everyone heard that, the 80/20, and continue to apply that, um, is big. And the other thing is just put it out there. Don't wait for perfection. I've been told that so many times, and every coach professes that. And I have to say, I am a recovering perfectionist. And
Okay.
it's, they say it is every day it's work, right?
Yeah.
And I have learned the hard way, sometimes my exacting eye, or what I see, or
Attention to
perception of
detail.
things, it's super hyper
It's in
attention to
our blood.
details. It is in our blood, and I think it can be a blessing and a curse. And it's great because you really can be an amazing asset to a team, to as a leader, to see those details and to catch things before they happen. But at the same time, if we hold off and don't initiate anything until after we're sure it's perfect, we don't really know it's perfect. And so, whereas I don't think it's prevented me from getting anywhere, because I've been very fortunate and had a lot of successes in my life, it has certainly, in some endeavors, when I'm really focused on the perfection and let the fear come in, because perfection and fear are very closely related. When you're doing that, I think you actually it just takes so much longer to get to where you want. And so I want to encourage anyone who's here and who's thinking about, should I, move forward with this idea? Should I change my work? 2020 has made a lot of people really reevaluate their lives and where they are. Should I make this transition? Well, what if it's something totally new? Well, don't worry, it's not completely new, because as AJ, you're pointing out, and in my life, if y'all have watched before, you know that for me, my life has built itself, and each new thing that I did, I was already starting off stronger, because I was able to use experiences, knowledge, strategies, education that I had from my previous career, whatever it was that I'm doing. And so, if you want to get somewhere fast, it's not just about fast. It's about checking it, putting it out there, doing it, trying it. Don't be perfect. And then being able to tweak it and change it. And so, like you did with the 80/20, you did it, you tweaked it, you changed it, you pulled in those that really made the difference, you let go of the rest, and you just kept moving forward. So, I think that's really, really a great takeaway. Thank you.
Yeah, that was a life lesson as far as technology went. If I just have to, condense it in a nutshell, the fact that you could take risk, get it out there, and learn as you go, doesn't happen in a traditional environment like the hotels, because
Yeah,
then or I'm not saying that has to be, for example, an airline industry, that you say put it out there. You can't do that. So it's very specific, that as long that
agree.
if it's a product, and I think that is more on the internet and technology, that you can try,
Hmm.
test it out. Of course, today you've got test modules. You will test it out. You'll have beta versions. Gmail had a beta version of Gmail for a very, very long time, right? I mean, that was for a
Yeah,
long time.
and
Kept
everyone, I
perfecting
think,
it.
yeah, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt. I believe you're right. I think putting out these betas, people today, especially on the internet, in the internet world, and on internet applications and tools, and people are expecting a beta. It happens so much that people often want to be a part of the beta, because then they get to influence what happens. They get first
Exactly.
access to it. Yeah, a great point. Yes, of course, if depending upon what your product and the size of your company, you can't just randomly throw something out there and say, well, let's see what happens and we'll fix it later.
That's true.
So
That is true.
thank you.
I
Thank
agree
you
with you.
for pointing that out. That's a very important distinction, 100%. So winding up, oh, I knew this would happen. There's always so much to talk about with you. I do want to touch on before we leave because I've been trying to narrow these times down, but it's been so difficult. Um, let's just touch a little bit on your real estate world. It's very fascinating how now you have transitioned all of these things and really now applying them in the real estate world. So give us a little insight as to what you're doing in the, again, really breaking the records, breaking, new ground with what you're doing in real estate.
Thanks, Jill. Real estate again happened as a challenge.
Mhm.
Um, in India till 2017, it was not a regulated industry, right? So when we had regulations that came in 2017. So prior to that, it was not regulated. It was, of course, there were a combination of both large industrialists and the smaller developers that were in real estate. It was very interesting. Um so I've had the pleasure of working with mentors, all starting with technology at the first technology company. So I've had my subsequent assignments have been with them in different industries. So
Mhm.
real estate was similar, and the challenge was, can we bring a service mindset and technology as a driver to enhance the and I must tell you, this product is an outstanding product. It is to every individual a lifetime's investment. There is no other investment class of that nature where you put in the largest proportion of your earnings or your savings into a product which is your home.
Mhm.
So from that point of view, it's a product that's a mother of all products. Yeah, because and second, you buy a product which you don't get to see for maybe 4 years or 5 years. So you're buying it with the risk that the product and the person I'm putting all my money in will deliver 5 years down the line a product
Mm.
which is what they've told me today, but 5 years down the line.
Wow,
So
that's a long,
if you,
long leeway.
yeah, yeah, if you put a perspective to that, just take a simple thing like your air conditioner, which is going to come in. The air conditioner of today will not be the same 5 years down the line.
That's right.
So that so you the design and build aspect of the developer has to keep that in mind, that I'm selling something today which has to be relevant 5 years down the line in terms of specifications, etc. So to me, as an asset class or as a product line, outstanding, great to be in an area like this, and at a time when systems and processes were probably not at its best. To introduce things like turnaround time,
Yeah.
standardization, centralization. So you breaking the mold. Traditionally, real estate developers had, you had a customer service person that handled everything for a project. So when I say everything, start from welcoming the customer on board, to raising the customer's invoices, to handling the customer's calls, to raising demands, to collecting money, and then to hand over. Uh, it sounds all very easy, but then in a linear manner, you cannot multitask or do multiple things at the same time. Something will fail because it's
Yes.
just one person handling everything, right? So if I'm collecting today, I cannot raise an invoice or send documents to you. So to break away from that, one introduced a process driven model, which is irrespective of number of projects. You have a team that does the relationship side of it, a team that does the documentation side, a team that does the collection, if I just take three, and then build a centralized contact center which took care of all the first level calls and basically the front door to the customer's experience. And then, of course, getting them benchmarked, getting them certified as a process, all that happened. I think that was an outstanding ride, and it still is today. I still do that, so I call myself a form of evangelist to go and set up or put in processes which are outside in looking and not inside out. It's a big
Interesting.
mindset change, Jill. It's not so easy. It's a
Yeah, I can see that where oh, I think we lost your light there, AJ. or maybe you froze. Um, I think that you're right. When we're used to always thinking about inside out, and we come from a service mentality, and that's the way we approach things. Um, it's difficult, I'm sure, to but as you've been doing, where you're on the cutting edge of something new all the time, you're probably always working on how uh, to sharpen that edge a little more and to think about things in a different way, which is how you're able to continue to do things on the cutting edge and be able to make that difference. And because you're creating something new right from the beginning. AJ, are you still with me? I think I lost you. Oops, we lost AJ. Hopefully, he'll be back in just a second. He was just wrapping up about real estate. One thing I forgot to mention is that AJ is coming from the developer side, so large commercial projects, and from the developer side. So that's why when he talks about the build out 5 years in advance, for any of you who are listening, you're thinking, at least in the US, like, what? 5 years? I would never put money into something and wait 5 years. There's talking about commercial projects in the US here, anyway, with residential. I'm a real estate agent licensed here as well. And of course, um, we're not. I'm not involved in commercial, but in residential, which most of us probably are associated with and think about when we think about real estate. The lead time is usually a year, maybe a year, something like that, year and a half, and then of course everyone's always behind, so it will end up being longer than that. But that's the way it works. I was hoping that AJ would join us back on here. And I don't see him signing back in, unfortunately. So the fortunate thing is that we actually were about to wrap up. We've actually gone longer than expected. So I want to thank everyone for watching today. Thank AJ. He will be available if you want to just tag him in LinkedIn. You can reach him. Let me put up here how to reach, if I can get it up there. There we go. That's how to reach AJ through LinkedIn. Please reach out to him. He's really this an amazing, amazing man. So interesting, done so many things, so gracious, so many great ideas. As you've heard and witnessed just a few of those. So be sure to check out AJ and connect with him there on LinkedIn. And likewise with me, you can reach me on LinkedIn, Jill Raff, and EX2CX Expert, or likewise my website and email address, jill@jillraff.com. So thank you for joining us there. Thanks again. And we look forward to next week with another great guest and another episode for Celebrity Customer Experience. And thank you for joining today. And we look forward to seeing you on another time. Cheers.